Hi there. Did you know about AI? I'm going to take you on a journey of discovery about AI and education technology. So this is a perfect seminar, very brief introduction into new technology, emerging classroom tech, and of course, artificial intelligence. This is ideal for teachers, ideal for parents, and certainly of interest to all the students that have a passion for new technology. Let's get going. So, what do people currently use AI for, typically in the workplace? Well, they use it for writing copy. We all know that we use chatbots for all kinds of stuff. We use it for helping with virtual assistant, online research, planning. Image generation is a ton of fun. Personalized shopping, effectively, 95% of people today have used AI in one form or another. And certainly 5% remain to be convinced. Those 5% are not people who necessarily dislike AI. They might just not have enough information to be able to trust it. So hopefully this brief introduction will give you an idea of what technology can do for schools, for classrooms, for school boards, and how to adopt it safely. So most people have no idea what AI is, but we all instinctively know that it's artificial and it simulates intelligence. Well, this has been an ongoing thing since the 50s. The 1950s is when AI was first mentioned by Alan Turing. He hypothesized that it was possible to have a general use computer that would be so intelligent as to be indistinguishable from a human. And since then, programs have been made smarter and smarter, and we call those algorithms. Algorithms are not intelligent. Algorithms use something called conditional logic. If something, then something else, otherwise something. So we have these kinds of conditional if-then statements. And if there's lots of them, then you can create these repeatable processes. Very important. This is the overarching type of software that runs on all computers in the world. We call it algorithms, and they of course include all programs which have to do with artificial intelligence. But algorithms are very important because they keep our society together. They make sure that encryption is applied where it's needed. For example, for stock market transactions, or even for this web page to get to you in encrypted fashion. When the term artificial intelligence was truly reinvented in the 60s and 70s, we saw that there was a way to mimic human behavior. And because we didn't have the computing power to actually make it think or connect with synthetic neurons, well, we created more symbolic logic rules to basically narrow the possibilities on the way to a solution when a user asks a question. We call those expert systems, and you might have seen them online on sites that try to come up with a diagnosis for the symptoms that you describe. Or non-player characters, which are essentially computer-based characters inside of games. Those use that type of artificial intelligence to essentially be kind of a one-track minded entity that we can interact with. It kind of feels like it has a will, but it does not. It's really not that intelligent. It just simulates intelligence. What you want is you want a neural network. A neural network is the ability to learn given data, just the way that a baby might, or a small animal. You've got programs that tune themselves based on the data. So they learn. And those programs that learn, they don't do very well with a little bit of data. We've seen some early chatbots that some websites have adopted because they were not trained on sufficient amounts of data. They had some pretty embarrassing results. That's not very good, but it's really good for recognizing things like spam, for example, and it lowers the rate of spam to well below 3%, which is very, very good. You can also use it to make predictions. It's not good at making predictions, but it's good at forecasting. So don't necessarily believe the hype with predictive AI. It's generally good for forecasting, but usually when it pretends to make accurate predictions, you have to treat it with a grain of salt. Now, the next level, since we practically live in the future, is AI that is trained to train itself. And that's what we call deep learning. So that kind of accuracy is boosted because AI itself learns from patterns that it sees itself. And that's learning. It's not learning in the sense that a human being would do it, but it's learning in the sense that a chatbot like ChatGPT or Copilot might do. Unfortunately, it doesn't really know how to prioritize. It doesn't know what's important. And sometimes it makes ridiculous mistakes. So what's the next best thing when you're asking it to, let's say, finish a sentence or generate an image? Well, the best thing it can do is to learn from another AI. Why? Because AIs can speak with AIs at light speed, and they can do a lot of learning. And so if you have an opportunity to understand and ask questions about AI, always ask for GANs. A GAN is a generative adversarial network. And by using an adversarial approach between a generator and a discriminator, an AI model can be trained that much faster on data that may or may not yet exist. It just goes ahead and creates the data just by having discussions with another AI, just the way that a human might by sitting on a park bench and trying to figure out all kinds of answers to the big questions with its friends. So error correction is fundamental to AI. And if you don't have that, it's really important to not trust an AI for educational institutions, for applications within schools and classrooms, right? So always ask, how does it work? And what information gets collected? Because, as we said, AIs nowadays can't do without information, and they are hungry for information. They want to collect all the information. But not everyone is willing to share that information. So consent is very important. And the consent of students and children is particularly important because it's their data that goes in. So you have to understand how those AIs work. And everyone has a legal right, especially children and students, to provide their informed consent. Be careful with that and make sure that you read privacy policies. Where the data goes is critical. In many cases, it goes to whatever country and whatever company built that AI, but it gets more interesting because nowadays companies rely on other companies, so they end up doing deals where they share the data and they say, hey, you know what, I got this deal going with a school board and I can get you data about kids. You can imagine where that's going to go and how that information can go across borders, even if it's not specific to a particular individual by name, even if it's something you call metadata or aggregate data. It's still your data and you need to know about it. And that's why privacy and security are critical when you're talking about education technology and AI for school use. You need to understand how it's stored, how it's processed, who gets access to it, and how long it's being kept. So teachers need to know that first and foremost, the ethical use of artificial intelligence and education technology in their classroom depends on them. The buck stops always with the teachers. You must peruse a privacy policy. You must understand it. You can't count on the school board or the school having done this work because most people don't know how to read a privacy policy. So you're the last mile. You need to understand the impact of this. If the children's data gets collected or stored or kept for a long time, or even resold. It's very important to consider factors like accessibility and usability, obviously compatibility, and something you call interoperability, how it's being shared and used across networks. Data security and privacy are of foremost importance, especially for me, because I am a professional in this space and this is what I care about the most. And obviously the effectiveness of inclusive learning and teaching and learning in general. You need to consider these factors before you unleash technology upon your students or even upon your classroom in aggregate. And always be careful. The more information you share, the more recording there is, the more of a risk there is. For example, people's voices can allow them to be cloned. People's images, if they get out to the internet, can be abused in so many different ways. So be careful about that information sharing, and consider that we've got an upcoming new law for artificial intelligence that is designed to protect all of us. And keep in mind that by law, every company will need to have human oversight and monitoring of how AI operates. We don't have that today, but it's going to be here any moment, and you need to enforce this. You need to ask for it. You need to ask who is accountable if this system gets abused, or if you lose track of the data that's collected in your own classroom. How safe is it? Is there a risk with the potential for data leaks? What if emails get lost? What if criminals get a hold of some of this information? What if unscrupulous marketers end up collecting this data, selling it to insurance companies? What if this is so opaque that you just don't know who they're sharing this data with? There are numerous education technology companies right now that are not transparent at all. And that's by design, because they're counting on schools and school boards not knowing what they're talking about when they're onboarding technology. So it's up to you, and it's up to parents, and it's up to even students to put up their hands and say, I need to know more, right? It's only fair, but it's also the law, because even though the AI Act has not kicked in yet, we are still protected by federal privacy legislation. So this legislation ensures that these systems have the capacity, the robustness, the integrity, and the resilience to protect the data that is shared with them, right? And they have to be transparent, and they have to make sure that they have consent, right? So what parents deserve to know: 3 things. 1, how is AI used in the classroom? 2, when EdTech tools keep data beyond year's end. This is very important. There's no data that needs to be shared with any EdTech vendors or AI vendors beyond the end of the year. Yet many of them abuse this trust and store this data beyond year's end, and school boards allow them to do this because they don't know. These things should be enforced, they should be controlled, and they should be exposed when they happen so that other parents can speak up. And finally, which teachers have not been trained on EdTech and AI, not even with a 10-minute seminar like the one that we're going through right now. So this is an exciting time. This is amazing technology that's changing the world, but we don't know whether it's going to be the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity. So let's make sure it's the best, and let's make sure we enforce the rights of students and kids, and obviously families everywhere, so we can all benefit. Thank you for taking part in today's seminar.